Hi, Keith. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Megan Murphy. I'm the Senior Coordinator of Marketing and Social Media at Health Monitor Network, and we're very happy to talk to you.
Likewise, likewise.
Hi, Keith. I'm so glad to see you again. See you again. So, yeah, as you know, my name is Joanna, and I am the editorial manager at Health Monitor. I had, like such a great time talking to you last time that, we thought that this would be a great video interview to do.
So, Keith, again, thank you for joining us. Can you just give us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Husband, father, been battling this type 2 diabetes journey for about what, 7, 8 years now. Professional sports photographer, so I cover all the major sporting teams here in Houston. Um, that's basically it, man. That's my life. I mean, I work at a college as well, but where I'm the communications manager, where I handle all the events and correspondence from the campus to the community, which also deals with our sports stuff there at the college as well. But mainly that's it. Just the easygoing type of guy that, just trying to spread my knowledge and kind of help people understand this type 2 diabetes journey and just offer some assistance and be that light or that inspirational beacon to others that are suffering from the same ailment.
Yeah, that sounds great. So, tell us about the day that led to your diagnosis and how are you feeling? And, what were the steps that you took?
Oh, that day it was I was doing automotive photography for a dealership, and it was in the matter of fact, I think it was in June of 2017, and I passed out on the job and got rushed to the ER. And that's what they told me that I was suffering from heat exhaustion and dehydration. But then that's when they also revealed to me, it's like, hey, look, you're diabetic. How long you been diabetic? And I was like, I'm not diabetic. What are you talking about? Like, nah, yeah, you are. We tested you 3 times already, and you pulling about a 285 on your numbers. So there's something going on, and 9 times out of 10, you're diabetic. Went and saw my PCP, and that's where they confirmed it. And so from that point, it was a matter of just trying to adjust to this new lifestyle that was thrown at me, right? And it was a rough start, right? I think most people probably could say that was a rough start, but then it kind of got easier as time went on, and so for right now, it's a matter of just maintaining right now. So I'm able to kind of maintain and do research, follow things that kind of work within what works best for me and my body, and just basically at this point, just maintaining and trying to keep that journey going so I don't get caught back or falling off of the horse on an exuberant amount of times because sometimes it does happen. But it's just a matter right now is just trying to make sure that I'm feeling good and I'm maintaining my glucose as I need to on a daily basis.
Tell us more about how you maintain your glucose, like you mentioned, and you said that sometimes you fall off the horse. Who keeps you accountable?
Um, probably probably my son, even my wife to some degree. Um, but most of the times I try not to depend on those things. I try to keep myself accountable because I don't want what I'm going through to cause any frustration or you know overexertion on anybody else. So I really try to keep myself accountable. So I truly watch what I eat. Just on this journey, I try to make sure that I check my numbers on a regular basis. Um, with me being, I guess you could say, physical or just being active all the time because I'm always running up and down the sideline covering sports. So that kind of helps out a lot to kind of keep me maintained. But it's keeping a track of the stuff that I eat and being watchful of those things as well.
Yeah, can you actually tell us a little bit about how your profession has impacted your health? So, one of your gigs you include photographing athletes. So, how did your health impact that part of your career when you are being so active capturing those photos?
Um, Really, it's just a matter of, like I said, keeping track of everything that I'm doing, right? I mean, the photojournalism part it adds to because it keeps me active as well, right? But with that being so active, and especially during this time where I'm covering baseball and soccer right now, it's being even more diligent with, maintaining my numbers, maintaining and being hydrated because all that stuff leads to stress on the body, and then that causes, to either you're gonna tank or you're gonna go high. And the hardest part is trying to keep that balance. But it's just a matter of knowing that if I'm going to shoot a game, it's actually those pre-steps that I take before actually stepping foot on the field. It's making sure that, that I ate right before, the game, or making sure I have in my bag just in case I have a low, making sure I have snacks in there that's going to bring me back up if need be. Keeping those things kind of in check before I step foot on the field.
Right. That's really interesting, like that you do the prep work before you even go to your work, right? So tell us more about your healthcare team. How's your relationship with your doctor, or do you work with a nutritionist or a diabetes educator?
I do. I work with my counselor, my diabetic counselor. Her name is Lori from Kelsey Sibo. Me and her have a great relationship simply because she's also a type 2 diabetic. And so she understands the struggle. And I think that's one of the greatest things that I really like about it, because when I go in and I talk to her and say, hey, look, man, I binged down on these brownies and cookies last week, and she's not looking down on me. She's like, okay, I understand, but it's the matter of, all right, what did you do afterwards to kind of get back on track? So it was that, and I found a new PCP just recently. I'm gonna say this. One of the things that I've also learned with my mom being in healthcare was finding a team that fits right with you. And I know a lot of people kind of struggle with, dealing with, their PCPs or their endocrinologists or their specialists or whatnot. And the analogy I use is finding your medical team is like literally like putting together a championship football
Right.
team, right? I got to find the right quarterback, the right running back, the right receiver to make sure that everybody mesh and everybody's talking to one another and understands their role within my life, right? So, it took a while, but putting that last piece together of my team that was the most challenging part, because I know lots of time with the PCPs, they kind of like they're the starting point with everything, because everything kind of got to flow through them before you get like the special treatment. So it was finding her, and then along with my specialist and then my endocrinologist, it was like, okay, now I feel like I have a winning team. So it's a matter of finding those pieces and putting them together and making them all work.
Yeah. I love how you related it to forming an all-star team. Like it's important to relate it to something that you're familiar with. And just being able to be open and honest with your healthcare team is definitely important. Um, Once you were diagnosed with diabetes, you made a commitment to yourself and your doctors to make a lifestyle change. Can you tell us what were some of those changes that you implemented, and how did your healthcare team help keep you on track making those changes?
Man, I'm gonna tell you, the day that I came home after being diagnosed, my wife was hot because I went in and I literally got rid of everything in the pantry, because it was like she just went grocery shopping and I cleaned out the refrigerator, but it was like I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to eat, but I know that most of the stuff in this cabinet in this refrigerator I cannot eat. So it was starting from scratch, doing the research, and then um, kind of implementing the certain things that I found doing my own research and going online and then talking to my counselor. So it was talking to her on a regular basis. And I made the promise to her. I was like, hey, look, Lori, I'm gonna do it, right? Like I'm gonna do it. I promise you I'm gonna do it. So even to this day, I send her pictures of me, with all the weight that I lost and just keeping it off and me working out, showing pictures of my son and of myself and my family, and she just kind of keeps me accountable, and that's what I really enjoy on that part, because it's more or less just try keeping that line of communication with them to kind of keeps me going.
Right. It's really helpful to have someone who can relate to you, right? So yeah, tell us more about, what specific changes did you make to your eating habits? And what was your diet like before your diagnosis?
What I did was I started eating more holistic in a sense of eating for energy and not eating for fulfillment or
Right.
entertainment, basically, right? I
So
mean,
it's
I used
basically you're eating, like for sustenance and not like emotional.
right, right. So, I mean, there is a little times where I sprinkle in a little entertainment eating, a little after five eating, if you will, but most of the time it's making sure that I'm staying on track with, all right, picking out my meals with eating more greens, eating more vegetables, and eating more, fruits and stuff like that, implementing more nuts into the diet. Um, and so it's that those type of meal. I mean, I'm not gonna say I eat with on a specific diet plan, because I found that that doesn't work for me.
Mhm.
Um, but it's just a matter of finding things and again, it's more about experiments. And I use the time to experiment with a lot of things. And that's one of the things that my wife helped me out with as well, is just kind of experimenting, changing that palate, not having to be stuck with the same couple of meals or, snacks all the time. It's a matter of changing it. So when I dropped down that rabbit hole of eating, it became very, very fun and interesting at the same time. So, things that I like, for instance, one of the things I used to hate was avocados and guacamole, right? And it's like, well, how are you from Texas and you don't like guacamole, right? But it was like, um, all right, but I made up my mind like, hey, look, your palate has to change, your eating has to change. So you have to start eating things that are different that you wouldn't like before. So that's pretty much how I kind of handled that. And like I said, and it's a matter of taking advantage of a lot of these websites that have menus that you kind of type in, like, but you can type in, I'm type 2 diabetic, and it kind of spits out all these different recipes for different meals you can try. And that's kind of been my go-to, as well as just kind of Google searching and joining a bunch of groups on Facebook and just seeing what everybody kind of eats and whatnot. And it's okay, you know what, I'm gonna try that, and then being a part of the community and writing on the topic and just collaborating and networking with other people that have suffered from the disease longer than I have, they kind of give their tips and advice has helped out a lot.
I like that you've seeked out advice from others going through the exact same thing. And I like that you were able to experiment with foods that maybe you didn't like in the past, but you're giving them a chance again and having fun with the different meals because at the end of the day, you're human. So you can't just eat the same five things.
Right, right.
On top of changing your eating habits, you also mentioned that you now work out to stay on track of your health. Can you tell me what exercises you enjoy doing and how has this improved not only your physical health but your mental health?
Man, the most simplest thing that I do every day is walk. And I really didn't know how effective that was, until I just started doing. Like, I intentionally park at the end of the parking lot when I go to the grocery store just to get steps in. Um, so that's one of the main things. And I kind of lift weights a little bit, light weights. I'm not into like the hit training and stuff like that. But the walking part has been the most efficient and effective thing for me. Being formerly 425 pounds to now 285, it's like seeing that change. It's like, all right, cool. Just stick with it and just kind of incorporate little things here and there.
Right. The little things add up, right? Like you don't
Right.
notice that you're getting more movement in. So it's not just about, doing like the fancy gym exercises, but it's about what do you call it? Like everyday movement, right? Like for your job, you take
Right.
photos and you don't even know it, but you're moving a lot because you're walking around. So you mentioned that you were what, 425 pounds before? Wow. Like, and
Yeah.
that's amazing. So what difference have you seen with your health after losing that much weight?
Man, the joints don't hurt. I talked about this a lot on my Instagram page. It's like the one of the plus sides of that is being able to see a smaller version of myself that I never knew that I could see.
Right.
Um, and growing up always being considered the big guy, and so you kind of get used to it and you kind of build your whole persona around that rhetoric and everything. And that's what I did, but then it was kind of like, all right, cool. So now people are like, okay, well, you can't call yourself Grizz anymore. You can't call, because you're not the big guy anymore. But I'm like, I'm still big, but it's not just that big, right? But no, I mean, I think that's one of the major things that I like about it was just seeing a smaller version of myself. Once I saw that the pain subsided, And it was like, all right, let me keep going. And that's where the whole walking thing came. I said, you know what? And I got to be intentional. So I started being more intentional.
Yeah, I feel like you saw the benefits, you enjoy seeing a smaller version of yourself, so you want to keep it going. You don't want to give up on that. And
Yeah.
yeah, I really like that. I want to change the topic a little bit. So you mentioned your Health Monitor Living feature that you and your wife Latoya welcomed your son Braxton. So can you tell me how becoming a father has impacted your life, specifically your health journey?
Man, it's that actually sparked even a more seriousness about keeping on track with my health, right? Because it was like, being told that I couldn't have kids or and finally being able to do that, not knowing that the weight was contributing to the fact of that we couldn't have kids. So being able to welcome him into the world, it was like, all right, so now it gets real. Now you have to make sure that you're able to sustain and keep up with this 4-year-old now. Now you got to stay focused and keep track because you want to be able to move around with him and spend as much time physically as possible with him. And so that's been really one of my biggest motivations to date is that right there is wanting to be able to keep up with him and entertain him and just you know focus on him and make sure that he doesn't suffer from the things that I suffer from with diabetes because with it running on both sides of my family, I try to make sure that he stays the course with what I'm eating in the sense of that he didn't do or make the mistakes that I did his age, and then going into my high school years and so now I try to keep him on track with what I eat now. But so being active with him is kind of one of my biggest motivations these days.
Yeah, it sounds like you're very goal motivated, right? So at first, once you start seeing the results, you were like, oh, this is great, right? And now that you have your son, you like you found your why. Like this is,
Yeah.
my purpose. This is what I want to do. And that's great. It seems like you're like, yeah, some people they don't have like that like self-motivation, like they need to find it like elsewhere. But like when you have that like inner motivation to just keep going, it helps a lot, right?
Yeah.
With
Well,
your
you know what else? You know what else helped? I'm gonna tell you what else helped.
health.
Okay. Y'all made me like a local celebrity here, okay?
Amazing. Yeah, and that was another thing that I would wanted to touch on is like that newfound confidence, right? I think you were speaking on that once you lost
Yeah.
weight. Like it's just like you were more confident to live life, right? And in addition, you welcomed the son. So you just have all this reason to like,
Yeah.
be a better person, right?
Yeah.
Another thing that I wanted to go back on is social media, right?
Mhm.
You mentioned earlier that, you met a lot of, other patients like on Facebook, Instagram. Tell us more about like that. When did you start sharing your story?
Literally probably a month after I kind of went through my whole depressed state, it was like, all right, I gotta talk about it. It wasn't just the good stuff. I was sharing the bad stuff, and then I started talking more and more about the bad days, not in a way to garner, what I'm saying, sympathy. It was therapeutic for me, right?
Right.
And then it was um getting recognized by you guys, Health Union, type2diabetes.com, and just like, hey, we appreciate the openness and transparency that you're sharing with everybody. And I didn't know that anybody was even watching. It was just like, I'm just going to talk about it, to get it off my chest so I
Right.
can feel better and
Right.
go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And I started meeting other people that I knew that I didn't know were following me. And they were like, hey, I'm recently a new diagnosed diabetic, we appreciate this, but how are you doing this? Or how are you handling this? So it was like, oh, I didn't know that many people were watching. And then when you guys first hit me up and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do an interview. Okay, yeah, I'll do this right up. Okay, yeah. And it's kind of this, you know, kept going. And I'm like, that's it. Let
Yeah.
me just talk about my life
Right.
in this aspect. And then one of my mentors, he was like, you should share that aspect being a sports photographer and how those two relate, right?
Mhm.
And so I kind of took that that aspect and applied it to my social media and Instagram. And I related sports with being a diabetic, and I related with being a photographer with being diabetic. And it just kind of, I'm not gonna say it took off to where I'm like super famous or whatever, but it kind of took off because I found other diabetics that
Right.
were either new or just wanted to connect and just kind of have that camaraderie and to talk about, the struggles and the ups and the downs.
Yeah. So it seems like, you know what they say, write what you know about, right? So you wrote what you know about. You
Right.
know about diabetes and you know about photojournalism. And that makes your story so relatable. Like it's genuine. It's not something that, like you did, like it's because you want it's coming from like a place that, yeah, I'm just gonna do it, because it's therapeutic, right?
Right. Right.
I also think that being vulnerable and transparent, like you talked about the dark days, not just the good days, I think that gives people like insight on what the realities are of living with
Right.
it. So I think sharing your story is very admirable. And I think a lot of the patients that we talk to, they find comfort in other people who have shared their stories. So when you were first diagnosed, you mentioned that for recipes, you would seek support groups of advice for those. So do you feel like you've been a piece of support for other people on this journey?
I mean, I would like to say that I have. And again, I tell everybody even on Instagram and Facebook, my DM is always open. Um, and like I said, but I try to talk about it on the forefront. I don't want, like when it comes to me, I talk about everything on the forefront. So it's not like it's hidden. Anything, and I'm like, yeah, because my biggest thing I'm dealing with right now is neuropathy. And so I'm having open conversations about that.
That's interesting that you mentioned your neuropathy. So, when you talk to other patients and then obviously, they give you advice, how do you relate that to when you see your doctor next or your healthcare team next, right? Like, do you bring up like, hey, I heard about this. What do you think about, like what I heard?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do bring it up a lot. And so I talked to my counselor about it, and I'm like, hey, look, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I want to do. I've proven that I've, changed up my eating habits and my lifestyle in that sense. What do you think if I did X, Y, and Z?
Right.
And she
Right.
was like, all right, I don't mind it, but I need you to keep close contact with me. And what I'm saying, send me your numbers every day so
Mhm.
so I can kind of look at it and kind of see how everything's tracking out. Um, and so I did that because I saw somebody else do it. And so when I brought it up to my endocrinologist, and he was like, "Oh no, we don't know, we're not going to do that." And so it was like, I need to find a new endocrinologist that understands what I'm trying to do, right? I want, I'm wanting to change. I'm wanting to eat healthier. I'm wanting to exercise more, and I need them to understand that and see that. So when I found my new one, it was like he understood and he was like, you know what? I truly appreciate that this is what you're trying to do.
Right.
Let's try it out. You know what I'm saying? So it's been a success in that aspect. So even when I'm on my new PCP, when I talked to her and I was like, hey, look, this is what's happened over the years. And she's like, okay. So she said the same thing. I respect the fact that you've taken the initiative, she said, because a lot of patients come in here, either they give up or they think that the medicine is the end all be all. So they continue to eat the same way that got them in this situation. So they just pop the meds to counteract the
Mhm.
reaction of eating badly. And she said, so I respect the fact that you kind of thrown that out of the window. And so she's like, all right, fine, I can work with your counselor and we can make sure that we're on the same page and create a plan that kind of works cohesively with one another to make sure that we're catering to what you're trying to do.
Yeah, that's really important to like be heard, right? Like instead of being dismissed. And it's not like, I like that you worked with your care team instead of just saying, I'm not going to listen to you guys. I'm going to go off on my own.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like how you have a lot of support from your healthcare team, but at the end of the day, I think you're your own biggest advocate, so you know your body the best. Um, do you have any advice that you would share to those who have been recently diagnosed with diabetes that you wish you would have known in the beginning of your diagnosis?
One thing I would say, which was the hardest for me to kind of grasp, was that with me being like, I just turned 46 today, but me
Happy
being,
birthday.
thank you. Um, ever since I got diagnosed, I say this didn't happen overnight. So the changes and the steps you take is not going to happen overnight. There's going to be some trial and error in there.
Mhm.
And that was one of the biggest things that kind of threw me off, what sent me in my depression state, was that I'm thinking like, you know what, cool, I'm just going to eat good this day and then all is going to be better. And it didn't happen. It was like, all right, cool, yeah, your numbers will great for this day, but then I get up the next day and numbers are crap. And it was like, wait a minute, what's going on? I'm not doing something right. It's not. So my advice would be take it one day at a time. One reading, one meal, one day at a time. Because that is the only way you're going to mentally prepare yourself for battling the journey that's ahead. Because if you try to take it on all at once, it's going to be overwhelming.
I
That's
completely
right.
agree.
I like that advice to just take it one day at a time. And it was another question I actually wanted to go back to. I'm glad that you brought it up again, was your depression, right? And we were just talking about this. How did you seek help? How did you recognize that, yeah, I am depressed? Because there are stats where, like African American males usually don't like going to
To the
like a
doctor.
therapist, exactly, or the doctor. So and I just wanted to talk to you because you brought it up, and yeah,
Yes.
tell us more about that.
Like I told you before, my diabetic counselor was literally the saving grace because again, it was the she was able to relate with me with what I was going through. And how that happened was my mom used to work for Kelsey Sibo, and she saw that I was going through this depression state. She's like, "Hey, look, you need to talk to Lori. She's gonna help you out because she's been there." And I'm like, "All right, whatever, mom." Like, so when I talking to her over the years has been that motivation, has been that inspiration to kind of keep me going. Just talking to like I said, I think the therapeutic part was talking to others and realizing that there were other people out there that suffer the same way. Because again, we all kind of get selfish and like, okay, why is this happening to me, and not realizing that there are other people suffering from this has been battling longer than you have, and
Mhm.
it's like finding those communities and seeing, okay, well, dang, there are people out here doing it, and so they're offering their advice, and then just one of my best friends, he's a therapist, and he's like, all right, he said, Keith, I don't know, I can't tell you anything about diabetes, but what I can tell you is about positive thinking. You got to think positive. You know what I'm saying? He was one of the ones like, hey, just talk about it and be therapeutic with it. You know what I'm saying? So whether you're writing in a journal or he said, hell, if you want to write on Facebook and just write about it. And so that's where kind of everything kind of just
Right,
played, marked into play and became that that counseling session, if you will.
right.
So
It's important to have that avenue. So you had that creative outlet to just, whether it's like journaling or writing on Facebook or, talking to your therapist. But yeah, it's important to have that outlet to just let it out and talk about
right,
it, right? And
You found the strength out of a very difficult journey, and I think that you advocating yourself for yourself has helped a lot of other people who want to be like you and find their footing on this journey. So I commend you for that.
thank you.
Well, Keith, thank you so much for joining us today and speaking with us about your journey. I think that the advice you've given will help a lot of people, and we really appreciate your time today.
No problem at all. No problem at all. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.